So in this video, we're just going to review the different types of angles that you've learned about in the last video. And then we're just going to practice with them. And so first, we've got that adjacent angles are angles that have a common side and the same vertex. So for example, 1 and 2. Now I want to point out that in red right here, that's the vertex. And angles 1 and 2 share this blue common ray. So angle 2 has the blue with this green, and the vertex is at the red. And angle 1 has blue with this purple. And because they share that blue ray, angles 2 and angle 1, they're considered adjacent. Angles 1 and 2 are right next to each other. Now angles 2 and 3 are also right next to each other, and so they'd be adjacent. Now if I ask you which angles are adjacent to angle 4, you'd tell me angle 3 or over here angle 1. All right? Now angles 2 and 4 are vertical. And in the last video, I mentioned the bow tie. So now let me show you again what I mean by the bow tie. With angle 1, angle 3 is the one that's vertical to it, and that right there kind of looks like a bow tie. Okay? So angles 1 and 3 are vertical. That's what that is saying. And then angles 2 and 4 are vertical, and there we can see vertical angles. So vertical angles kind of make a V like that. You can think, okay, V for vertical, and then over here you can see once again V for vertical, and adjacent would be right next to each other. Okay? Now complementary, again, it's the right thing to complement someone, so they add up to 90. And let me just highlight that real quick. So we got 90, and supplementary add up to 180. So over here, angle JMK is complementary to KML. And what that means, folks, is if I suggest that this is a 30-degree angle right here, that angle KML is 30 degrees, that means this complement is 60 degrees. Now for supplementary, they add up to 180 and they make a straight line. So here, let's say I say that this is 35 degrees. If that's a 35-degree acute angle, what plus 35 adds up to 180? All right, so all you got to do is just think of 180 minus 35, and we're going to get that it'd be a 145-degree angle over here. So 145 is the supplement of this 35-degree angle. Okay, so complementary adds up to 90, supplementary adds up to 180. Now down here in this section, what we've got is we're going to try to identify certain angles from this picture. So please don't just write down these answers and move on. I want you to really watch me identify which angles are vertical or complementary, or adjacent. So for the first one, we want to know which angle is vertical to angle AOB. Now I'm going to bust out my highlighter, and I've got angle AOB is right there. That's the yellow angle. So I want to know which angle is vertical to that, which means it's angle EOD. You could write it as EOD or DOE. It really doesn't matter because the O would be right there in the center labeling that angle. I'm going to leave it with EOD because if it says AOB, I think it's just going right here from left to right. So I'm going to go from left to right. Some of you might say, well, if it's AOB and A and B are in alphabetical order, I'm going to write DOE so that D and E are in the alphabetical order. It does not matter. All right, now I'm just going to erase that, and let's move on to number 2. So for number 2, this angle and EOA are vertical. So EOA is that green vertical angle. So BOD would be the vertical angle with it, BOD. You could put angle DOB. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. All right, now let's talk. So that was the answer to that one. So this angle contains ray OC. So let me just erase real quick. All right, so we want to contain ray OC, and we want to be next to EOD. So EOD. So we want an angle that's next to this blue one that has this ray in it. So, one second. Sorry about that. And so what we're trying to do is find an angle that has ray C within it. So BOD is also going to be our answer here. Oh my gosh. Sorry, they kept coming on to make announcements while I'm recording this video. But what we're saying here is that angle BOD in green contains this yellow ray and is next to the blue one. So this is also the answer to the third question. All right. Now for the last one, we're going to erase. And for the last one, we have an angle that contains ray OD. So ray OD is this one here in green. And we're looking for something that contains that ray and is next to AOB, adjacent next to AOB. So here's AOB. So we want an angle that's going to share a ray with one of these blue lines, but also has the green one within it. So if I pick, let me highlight here in yellow, if I pick COE, it's not adjacent to AOB because it's not touching right there. So we're not going to pick this one. We're actually going to pick the straight line, BOE. That straight line here in yellow shares a ray with this blue angle right here. It's sharing a side. And within this yellow angle, we have this green one. So for the last one, it's going to be the straight line across, BOE. And that's the last answer there. Now for this next section, I'm going to leave it to you to do this part. You're going to find the complement of some of these angles, and then for the next section, you're going to find the supplement of these angles. So basically for questions 5, 6, 7, and 8, you're trying to figure out what would add up with the given angle to be 90. And then for these, you're trying to figure out what would add to the given angle to equal 180. When you're done with that, you can move on to the next page. If you want to just pause the video to work on this, the video is going to continue on with the next page. So this page only reviewed adjacent, vertical, complementary, and supplementary. And now we're going to review corresponding alternate interior and alternate exterior. I want to remind you guys that the transversal is what cuts across these parallel lines to create all of these angles. And angles, if they're the same, they're called congruent. Now first, let me point out all of the corresponding angles in this picture. If I highlight one and I'm looking for which angle is in that exact same spot, just at the other intersection, angles 1 and 5 correspond to each other, and that's that pair right there. Now, if I want to know what angle corresponds to angle 2, it's angle 6. Angle 2 and 6 are in the same spot. Now, if I want to go with angle 3 is on the bottom left corner of this intersection. So at the bottom left corner of this intersection is angle 7. So 3 and 7 are corresponding. And last but not least, 4 and 8 are the last pair that are corresponding. Now I'm going to erase real quick so I can just trace an angle for you and show you that they have the same measure. Angle 1 is clearly an obtuse angle, and I've kind of traced it there. If I move that down to angle 5, you can see that angle 1 and angle 5 are going to be congruent. All right. Now I'm going to take that and just flip it around so that you can see that angle 4 right here is the same as 1. They're vertical. Okay, they're vertical, so they're the same. And 4 and 8 are going to be the same. So 1, 4, 5, and 8 in this picture are all going to have the same angle measure. All right, now let's talk about alternate interior versus alternate exterior, okay? So on the inside of the parallel lines, we have angles 3, 4, 5, and 6. If I want to know which ones are alternating interior, 3 is alternate interior with 6, and that's right there. And 4 is alternate interior with 5. All right, now for the exterior angles, we've got 7 and 8 on the outside, and 1 and 2 are on the outside. So 1 is on the alternate side of the transversal with 8. So 1 and 8 are alternating around the transversal on the outside, so they're alternate exterior. Careful, folks. You might be asked, what's the relationship between angle 2 and angle 8? And 2 and 8, there is no relationship between them. Now, 2 and 6 are corresponding, but 2 and 8, there is no relationship between 2 and 8. So now that we've reviewed those angle types, you're going to come down here and just try to identify the relationship between angles 1 and 2. It says in the instructions that you're going to write a C if they're corresponding. You're going to write an I if they're alternate interior. You're going to write an E if they're alternate exterior. And last but not least, you'd put an N if they're none of those. So remember, up top, 2 and 8 would be none of those. There's no relationship between 2 and 8. So you're going to work now to just try to identify those, and that concludes this video to review all of the angle vocabulary that you've learned and you've now practiced on these 2 pages. Thank you.